we'll go ahead and call this work session to order. First item of business we have is employee recognitions. So first up, we have I welcome Chief Seymour for his employee recognition.
We'll be waiting on Martin here. He said, go ahead.
Yes, he said, go ahead.
Jason, come on up. And family, come on up. Make this a family affair.
Of course.
So as I think you're aware of, we recently had a sergeant come open due to retirement of prolonged service there. So upon his retirement, we of course held a promotional assessment and selected Jason Cowan for sergeant. So Jason has been here for 10 years now. Well, 10 years or so. 10 years. Previously, he had experience at another agency down in Georgia. But with him is his father and then his lovely wife. And I told him, be prepared to give a speech. So tonight we want to confer the certificate of promotion, the Chief of Police having placed special trust and confidence in the professional excellence and leadership abilities of Jason Anderson Cowan. Having demonstrated these qualities and his capacity for greater responsibility and service, does hereby promote him to the rank of sergeant, empowered with all the authority, in charge with all the duties commensurate with his rank, effective this date in the city of Red Bank on February 10th, 2024. So as part of this, we take off his officer badge and we pin him with his sergeant badge. So his dad's going to do that. I'm going to take that off and hopefully he won't stick him to me. It won't be bad. Yeah, you said that'll work. That'll work. All right, congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. So is there anything you want to say? Because usually I'll do that opportunity.
I just want to thank the commissioners, city manager, of course, chief, deputy chief, my colleagues, and of course my family. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sergeant Cowan. Congratulations. All right, we have one more employee recognition today, so I'll turn it over to our city manager, Mr. Martin Granum.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. If I could please be joined up here with my colleague, Deputy Public Works Director Leslie Johnson. We got this really cool and extra large envelope from the Comptroller of the Treasury. And inside, I'm careful, I don't want to get any greasy fingers on it. I will read this document. The state of Tennessee, this is to certify that Leslie Johnson, having met all of the statutory requirements as set forth in the Tennessee Code annotated, is hereby designated as a certified municipal finance officer in witness this certification number 989 is hereby granted this 31st day of December 2023, signed by the Institute for Public Service Director, the Comptroller of the Treasury, and the Director of Local Government Audit. Congratulations, Leslie.
Thank you. So for a reference, I think our former finance director, his CMFO number was like 109. Yes.
Should we call you 989?
Agent 989.
Number 989.
Yes, but I thank you for the opportunity to have actually participated in it. It is a 12-month, year-long. I think they take 1 month off midsummer, but it is a commitment. So those that are doing it now, city manager, he probably should have been finished before me, but he did not start. I was lucky. I started January 1 and went all the way through. If you start mid-year, you have to cycle the way through. So, but thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to have that certification and to help Red Bank.
And
Congratulations, Agent 989.
and excellent timing with the recent retirement of our CFO. The more CMFOs on staff, the merrier.
I would agree.
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations. All right. I think we might have more business for Ms. Johnson. The next item on our agenda is postponed from last meeting. Request to rezone 221 Sweetland Drive, ordinance number 24-1254.
Thank you. First off, let me apologize for my absence at our last meeting. Unfortunately, COVID got the better of me. So we're back on the agenda here. I want to pass out a couple of things just for you. I think that's one. Thank you. So I know we don't do this often, to actually bring you copies of the zoning ordinance that identifies what we're actually talking about, but I think this particular case warranted that kind of walkthrough. I think more and more we are seeing, by evidence of applications that come in, and some of the confinements we have with our current zoning ordinances, and for better part, the land use plan that we have on file. It's creating more conflict. We don't find pathways that are easy for applicants to navigate. It becomes very almost roadblock. If you want to do this, well, then you need to do 3 or 4 more steps. We are very aware of some of those challenges. That is already on our future list of activities to take on once we finish the comprehensive planning process. That will include looking at land use, current land use, trends that are happening, and obviously the desires of the community. So until we get to that point, we are left with what we have on the books. So we always have to navigate very carefully to be mindful of what the commission wants, what the city wants to see, and then how land use needs to happen. So in this particular case, we have a property owner who is requesting their current R1 to be rezoned to R3. It's my understanding their intent is to look at adding multiple multifamily onto the property. So again, starting with it being R1, it needs to be rezoned accordingly. The challenge that comes into play with your R3, if you'll take a look at what I gave you, under the permitted uses, under 305.01C, it specifically talks about multifamily dwelling units that are not part of a mixed use development, which in this case, it's my understanding that would be the application. They are permitted by what they call a special exception permit. So if we flip over to another page, third page in is page 53 of the zoning ordinance. Under 305.07, uses permitted by special exception permits are allowed by the planning commission, the city commission upon recommendation by the planning commission, and should follow the same sections of 14.301.06. So if you flip the page, you'll say I've highlighted 301.06, which is actually found in your R1 zoning district. So it's for a lack of better terminology, it feels like a goose chase.
Scavenger hunt.
Is what's happening, correct. So if you look at the 301.06, when it talks about the special exceptions for 2-family and multifamily, it really doesn't get into the heart of what needs to be looked at. And this specifically says does not apply to, quote, new construction. In this case, that's what that would be. So again, there's another hurdle to get over. If you look on the back side, Section D, which staff has reviewed it internally, and we believe, which is reflected in this ordinance, that the recommendation would be to rezone it to the R3, but with this condition to apply that Section D to this application. So it gives the applicant direction. It tells them what should be looked at and what to prepare for. If we don't direct them to this, again, it leaves them, like you say, on a scavenger hunt, what is sufficient and what is not. In addition to that, it gives the planning commission some guidance to take a look at. If we consider it, what do we need to look at? And again, in this case, I also believe it does warrant, and it is supportive of existing zoning uses that are around it. There is already a multifamily use happening on the property immediately adjacent to this one.
So just to clarify, there was some discussion last meeting about potentially adding additional conditions, like a time limit. And I think there may have been a misunderstanding about staff recommendation. My current understanding is that staff recommends the current ordinance as written and presented to us today.
Correct,
without any additional conditions.
correct. The only condition that's added is to refer them back to this specific special use, section D on what needs to be submitted, when they're ready to do that.
Which is already written into the ordinance language.
Correct. We're just giving them guidance as to where to go look.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Ms. Johnson regarding this rezoning?
Will this alter any of their proceedings? Or this is for them to move forward?
Yeah, it gives them the guidance to move forward. Their next step will be, if it is rezoned on the second reading, then they will have some guidance to come in and to present either a schematic plan or a conversation with the planning commission as to why they're asking for that special exception. And the way our ordinance is written right now, it will require another step for them to come back to the city commission to approve that based upon the planning commission's review.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, we hope to eliminate some of these hurdles. But again, as it is right now, we're trying to find some feasible and some clear-cut direction for everyone to follow as we go.
But despite the clunkiness of our current ordinance language, the applicant has expressed a willingness to jump through all of these hoops.
Yes,
Excellent.
yes.
They would have-
Hopefully with this clarity.
Yes.
And that's, to me, is what's imperative. Also for the planning commission to have this clarity.
Thank you.
Probably looking at 4 more meetings before they could possibly,
Break ground.
make.
Yeah, I think depending on how quickly they want to submit for this request,
Mhm.
it may turn over the planning commission gets it, and it would fall back into you probably in April. If not sooner. We will do our best to expedite it, but again, that becomes subject to the applicant's initiation.
4 meetings total, not including second readings.
That's, yeah, I was
Yes,
talking about
Yeah.
second reading and then
planning commission.
work
and then city
session and then
commission.
meeting and then back to
Vote and then a
us.
second
Yep.
reading.
Yes,
Okay,
Because the special exceptions permit would also be
Yep.
2 readings.
planning commission, no, just
One for the special, for this, okay, so there's only one for that at least. Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Johnson?
do we know what is the idea still potentially something like 10 units or something like that
that's my understanding.
around
Yes.
that number? Okay, thank you.
But the site plan that that we've seen up to this point is only a rough idea. It would
It's
have
what I
to
would call
go,
a schematic or an illustration. You
It would
it's
go
not
back to the
technically
planning
included, Yeah, site plan.
it would go back to the planning commission for an actual site plan.
Yes, that
Final
would-
site
once we finish with that, then it would rest with the planning commission. Once those permits, those sites, those plans are approved, then the permitting handles internally with the official.
Excellent. All right, anything else? Okay, we'll move on to our next item of business. Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you.
We have our library discussion. So I'd like to welcome City Manager Martin Granum. Now, this is the 5th of our 5 commission goals that we agreed upon at our last retreat. We have our next one coming up shortly.
Yes, ma'am. And good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. And I handed out a little one with yellow tabs for the commission, and there's some copies down back there on the table behind me. And this is also posted on the website under this work session agenda item for people online who want to go get to it. So we're not asking for any decisions tonight. This is just to get it all out there with the 5 of you and also in the public eye, start the conversation around a library in Red Bank. Purpose, continue the conversation surrounding the commission goal to, quote, create a Red Bank community library and civic center, unquote. Specifically, this discussion paper aims to bring to a close the discovery phase and help to identify next steps. And I am the responsible party. And I break this paper up into some background, some discussion, a conclusion, and some recommendations. And I'll just walk everybody through this paper to make sure that all of us are on the literally understand this whole document, 7 pages in all. It's data dense, and so with your permission, Mayor, I'll just launch into it.
Please.
Okay, thank you. Background information, Red Bank does not have a public library. And since the dissolution of the Hamilton County system many years ago, residents of Red Bank cannot access free public library services. And on your paper, I referenced note 1. On the second page is down at the bottom in blue, and the color copies is a series of 4 notes. So note 1 reads, non-residents of Chattanooga may purchase access to Chattanooga's system at a cost of $50 per year. And there's a hot link there, and that is contained in the Chattanooga Library Circulation Services Policy. I will also note that school-age children have been allowed access to the Chattanooga Public Library System too, and that's just their own decision to do that. Background point 2, back on the front page. There are numerous examples of public library service delivery models in the area from which to benchmark, and I list them all out there. The first one is the Chattanooga Public Library System with multiple locations. The closest is the North Gate branch, approximately 5 miles away, and the downtown main library, approximately 3 miles away. And those distances are measured from City Hall. So obviously, if you're north end of town, probably the closest is the North Gate. The second benchmark, paragraph 2B, is East Ridge City Library, located in their City Hall at 1517 Tombras Avenue. Third benchmark, Collegedale Public Library, a standalone building next to their City Hall and Collegedale Commons at 9318 Appleton Pike. A fourth benchmark, Signal Mountain Library in a standalone facility at 1114 James Boulevard. And lastly, Saudi Daisy Community Library, a nonprofit library in commercial space at 9619 Dayton Pike, Suite C. So those are our benchmarks that we can take a look at. Background point 3. The state of Tennessee's subject matter experts regarding libraries are housed in the Comptroller's Office, Office of the State Librarian and Archivist. And then I reference back to note 2, again on the second page, where there's a hot link there to the Office of the State Librarian and Archivist in the at the state level. The state defines what it means to be a, quote, public library. And note 3, again on the back, is a reference to the Tennessee Public Library Standards. And that's a fairly prodigious document. It turns out you just can't wake up one day and decide something's a library. There's a lot of standards and criteria to meet, and it's all codified there by the state. And it also explains the minimum service delivery. Please review the application for attachment as an independent library at attachment 1. And that is where I want to refer you back to that first yellow tab. And it's page 3 in the document, and it says attachment 1. I mentioned that the Tennessee standards are a prodigious document. This one-page application does a fantastic job of distilling all that criteria down into a very succinct document. So here, if you're applying to be a library and be recognized by the state, here are the criteria you must meet. You must have a resolution from the city or county commission that recognizes the entity as a public library. Step 1. Step 2, a minimum of 51% of library operating expense is comprised of public funds from the city and or county. Step 3, the library budget provides a minimum of 20 hours a week for paid staff. Point 4, a governing library board has been appointed in accordance with TCA, and they list the statute there. Point 5, the library is open a minimum of 20 hours a week. Point 6, a library holds or owns a circulating cataloged collection. In other words, it must be actively managed. And lastly, basic library services are free to the community, including but not limited to circulation of materials, reference services, programming, and public access to technology. So in one page, you can distill down all those voluminous criteria into things that are somewhat, you can wrap your brain around. Background point 3B. The state also offers a modest level of support to bona fide independent libraries that is not cheap, but presents a great value to the enrolled independent libraries. And then there's 3 of the bigger attributes you can gain access to if you buy in as an independent library. The ability to join what they call Tennessee Reads, and it's an acronym, Note 4 on the back, READS stands for Regional Ebook and Audiobook Download System. And there's a hot link to that. Tennessee READS provides access to online resources with an annual circulation of 6 million, serving 270,000 patrons statewide. Year one costs, referred to as the buy-in equity payment, is approximately $44,000. Thereafter, the annual costs for enrollment in Tennessee READS are approximately $6,500. I mentioned that just to represent that there'll be startup costs and then there'll be state sustainment costs as we undertake to create a library for Red Bank. Point 3B, these are other things you get if you're recognized by the state as an independent library. You have eligibility for technology grants that serve both patrons and staff, and you have eligibility for digital literacy grants, things like providing Wi-Fi access, training, and internet connectivity. So it's very worthwhile to obtain independent library status and then participate, or buy into, I should say, in the offerings at the state level. Page 2 is discussion. Public libraries contribute to community vitality, create a sense of identity and belonging, and generate activity that can benefit businesses. Red Bank is the only city of comparable size in Hamilton County that does not have library services. And I list off the other ones. Signal Mountain, Saudi Daisy, East Ridge, and Collinsville all have access to library services. Point C, nonprofit library. It seems unlikely that Red Bank will have a nonprofit library come into existence on its own. It has not happened since 1955. It's wonderful when it happens, but very communities will ever get a library essentially given to them by a small, dedicated, well-resourced group of volunteers. If Red Bank wants a library, the city must take the lead. Point D, Chattanooga Public Library, abbreviated CPL. Joining CPL does not lead to a library within Red Bank. It does not preclude it, but it is not envisioned in the current proposal. Details of the Chattanooga Public Library offered to Red Bank dated April of 23 are found in attachment 2. And please flip to attachment 2. I'd like to go into this in some detail. Mayor Berry and I met with Mayor Kelly and his then executive director of Chattanooga Public Library back in early 2023, and they were very receptive to seeing if there was a path for Red Bank residents to be viewed as patrons of the CPL. This page represents a lot of hard work on the part of CPL to come up with a good offer for us to consider. So I'll read some of it. The summary of the offer from CPL. The Chattanooga Public Library is proposing to offer full library services, see attached, and that second page is basically a listing of all the things that Chattanooga Public Library does, and it's a platinum system. So I think we've all had a look at what they do, and they're very good at what they do. So they're offering to propose full library services to patrons who live in Red Bank with a plan to expand services in the future. The services fee proposed has been calculated using the estimated population of Red Bank who are not Hamilton County School students, multiplied by the $50 non-resident fee and a 16% discount. That winds up to $42. This figure is currently $450,000 per year and will be fixed for 3 years, at the conclusion of which it will be reproposed. Below that is a breakout of year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and they sort of ease into incrementally offering more services here in Red Bank. But the bottom line is, for $450,000, all of Red Bank residents could participate in Chattanooga Public Libraries if they're residents of Chattanooga. So that's an interesting number to hold on to in our mind's eye. $450,000, and we're in Chattanooga. Back to page 2, point E. The enclosed spreadsheet offers a head-to-head analysis across various aspects of the nearby benchmark library service delivery models. And attachment 3, please have a look. So I refer you to the last page in this packet, attachment 3. This is not a very large spreadsheet, but it's pretty data dense, so I want to kind of walk us through what I've presented here. First of all, just across the top, we'll look at each column. The libraries are listed in the leftmost column One column to the right is the square foot, or the size, the footprint, if you will. The third column over, items in the collection, so you can kind of get a sense of the scale of their offerings. The fourth is hours of service delivery. The fifth is the number of patrons. The sixth column budget is kind of what's in their budget or what it would cost us, and I'll have a lot more to say about that, but that is the comparison. The next one over is what is not in the budget number. And I'll have a little bit more to say about that. And lastly, it's just some additional comments. So that's what the columns are. And now let's go to Chattanooga Public Library and we'll work down and take a look at comparing them head to head across these various aspects. Chattanooga Public Library is just a big number. It's 450,000. And multiple branches, pretty much the platinum level of offering. So we all kind of know what we get with Chattanooga Public Library. That would probably be the platinum option. Next one down, East Ridge City Library. They are in a 4,900 square foot building. They have 36,000 items in their collection. They offer 48 hours of service delivery. They're open to the public 48 hours. They cater to 9,300 patrons. Their budget is $296,906. Now, the next column over is what's not in that nearly 300,000. They don't have any facility costs, so they don't pay for the space with that budget. It's just provided by the city general fund. So that 4,900 square feet, the cost of that is on top of that 300,000. And they are located within the city hall, and they share some attributes of the city hall. The staff break room is not in that 4,900 square feet, and the public restrooms are not in that 4,900 square feet. They're outside elsewhere in the city hall. Coming down to the next one, Collegedale Public Library. They're in a 5,000 square foot building. They have 152,000 items in their collection. They're open 52 hours a week, 7 days a week. They have hours open. What you learn about these libraries is they're very dialed into their patron base. And Collegedale being open 7 days a week is just a representation that they're very dialed into their patron base out there. Their budget is $550,000. And again, the space is not included in that. So that 550 doesn't pay for any of that 5,000 square feet. The last note over on the right is they're slightly unique in that it's a city operated library, but it's not City of Collegedale staff. They have a contractor, Library Systems and Services, which is a national provider of libraries, and they're the platinum operator in that space too. So they get excellent service with the contract that they have. It's city provided space, city operated library, contract staff. In fact, the contractor does everything. They buy the books, they manage the circulation. Lock, stock, and barrels run by a contract.
They only got 2,600 people.
Mm-hmm.
Those are their patron base that they reported to me. It may be a slightly different way that they look at the patrons, but that's their numbers.
Okay.
Now, Collegedale has a population roughly similar to ours, around 12,000. This is just the number of registered card holders, I assume.
Maybe, yep. Lastly, I put down Signal Mountain. They're in the biggest of all the space. Oh, one more note about Collegedale. They would like to expand. They really need about 8,000 square feet to meet the demands for service delivery. It feels cramped when you go in there, but it's busy. I mean, it's a great place to be. All these libraries are very nice places to be. Signal Mountain, 7,500 square feet. Their budget is $220,000, and again, it doesn't cover any of their space. So I drew from that a recommendation that we would size at about 6,000 square feet. That's that bottom left number. And I'm budget estimating that the space is about $100,000 full in lease space would be what we would need to budget to get about 6,000 square feet in Red Bank. So that's the head to head. Let's flip back to page 2. And now we're at the conclusion. The two options that will create a library in Red Bank are city operated and nonprofit. The nonprofit model requires significant external support not seen to date and is not something that the city can direct. The City of Red Bank Library as a part of city operations is the most certain approach. Costs and scale of operation are anticipated to be similar to East Ridge. Red Bank should anticipate an FY 25 cost of approximately $400,000 and the annual operating expenses in 2024 dollars in that range as well. And what I mean by that is if we were to budget 400,000 in the next budget year, most of that would be startup costs. And we would begin operating actually late in the fiscal year. And then once we began operating, it's about a $400,000 sustainment over time. Budget estimates. Recommendation. The commission authorized the city manager to factor a City of Red Bank operated library into the proposed budget for vetting as a part of the budget process. So again, I'm gonna go end where I started. I'm not asking for any decision tonight. We will agenda this again for more work session conversation. We're in advance of the budget. So really what I would like to know from the commission is the commission interested in finding a $400,000 place in the budget? Staff will go through the budget process with the commission and we'll just see what that looks like. So this is not a decision to fund a library. It's just a discussion to factor it in to the budget conversation. And again, I don't really want that answer tonight. I just wanted to put all this out there, let you all ask questions, kind of wrap your brain around it. And then the next work session, we'll follow it up with more of a conversation about if you really want to take a hard look at this in the budget process.
Now, this is normally a question I'd ask John,
Yes,
but in this case, is it your opinion that we have the headroom in the budget to cover such an expenditure in this budget year?
it is my opinion. But that is not informed by going through the budget process. But yes, I do think that our revenue stream is adequate for this. It's gonna force some hard conversations. And it will come at the expense of other things. But what's in the current budget, the reason I say that is in the current budget is some rather large one-time only costs, mostly around the planning that we're doing. So those will drop off. Now, on the heels of that planning is we're gonna execute those plans. So there's costs associated with that, but they're not budgeted. They're not really approved by anybody. We just kind of have a sense that there's gonna be stuff to do as these plans get finalized. But so yes, I do believe that there's room to have a conversation. But we haven't had police, fire, and public works to voice their desires in the budget either. So, or any of the commissioners, frankly, for that matter.
Or their needs.
Or their needs, yes, right. But I think what is really we should ask ourselves is this something that Red Bank wants to take a look at? If the cost of a city-owned library is somewhere in the neighborhood of $400,000 a year, is that a conversation we want to have? And again, I don't need an answer tonight. It's just something that we need to ponder, and then I will need direction from the commission to go through the work of creating the budget that would do everything we could to factor that in.
Well, I can't speak for my colleagues, obviously, but unless anybody has changed their mind, I think you got that go ahead when we set that as a commission goal, a top 5 commission goal.
I agree, but it was uninformed by the realities of what it was really going to cost.
Sure.
And so it certainly reopens that conversation in a more informed way. But my personal opinion is the city of Red Bank needs a public library. It would do a lot of things for us. It would generate a sense of place, sense of identity. Brings wherever we locate this library, it's going to be a magnet for people and patrons and economic activity and all the other places around it. It drives a lot of good things for the city of Red Bank beyond offering the library services directly. So, but I'm a library fan, so I would say that.
Go ahead.
Oh, you got it.
I was just going to say, I wanted to thank you for doing the research to put together this report. I know it's a lot of work. It's a very in-depth look at our colleagues around Hamilton County and what they're doing and how they're solving this problem for their residents. But I don't want to leave out your qualifications to prepare this report, and that you established a library at your former hometown and served on the board for many years. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're not a spring chicken when it comes to library services.
Right. And that really informs me in my confidence that we can do this. If the commission green lights it, we will succeed at this task. There's no doubt about it. We would have a very good public library for Red Bank to be proud of, on par with the other services that we offer. You know, police, fire, all of our public work services are at a level of excellence, and the library would be at that level of excellence. I like to think of East Ridge as a good benchmark for us. And if you haven't been to the East Ridge Library or any of these benchmark libraries, I would encourage everybody in the community to go visit those libraries. They're just wonderful places. And they meet a lot of needs for those communities. A gathering spot, meetup spot, access technology, early reading, you know, pre-reading, young readers, young families, older demographic that wants help with technology. There's just a myriad of ways that a modern library meets the needs of today and tomorrow. This is not a book warehouse we're talking about. This is not our grandparents' library. This is the library of today and tomorrow. And as all these libraries meet the unique needs of their patron base, so would we. I was in conversation with the contractor who does the Collegedale Library, and they actually have a process, and they call it a needs assessment. It's a library needs assessment. It's exactly the same approach that our parks team is using to discern what kind of park services does this community need. And so we would have some sort of a needs assessment process that would discern what we would do on day one, and then we would evolve with the community over time. Libraries are very dynamic. They're really on the cutting edge of service delivery. They're very responsive to their patron base over time. So that would be our goal, is to be viewed by the patrons that come to us for library services as a place they want to come to.
Could you talk about the kind of difference in service delivery between a contract driven or contract run library versus one that we would run ourselves?
It's really transparent to the patron. You really can't tell it. When you walk into Collegedale, it doesn't look like a contract operated library. It's very much behind the scenes. The contract unburdens the city from having to have that competency on the staff directly, and it has the added benefit of a very deep bench. They have bulk buying. They have all the technology to run a state-of-the-art facility that they just send to you. You don't have to worry about the software applications and all of the behind-the-scenes technology. You don't have to buy all that. It comes with the contract. So there are definite advantages to just partnering up with somebody like LS&S on day one. Collegedale loves it. When you talk to the people out at Collegedale, my colleagues in the city, they love the relationship with the contractor. And when you talk to the patrons, the mayor and I were at a meeting last week, and we talked to some of their elected officials, and they were very happy with their experience at the library as well. So Collegedale is well served by that relationship. I am confident that we could do it as a city, because whatever we turn our mind to, we do it with a level of excellence. So I'm not at all intimidated about having to ramp up with that. We would hire the right people and knock it out of the park, similar to Signal Mountain and East Ridge, where they have city staff who do that.
Would that ultimately be a lower cost per year once you get that process started and you're
I believe so.
running
I believe so. When you look at the cost comparison, they're one city's kind of an outlier. And I think they're getting platinum service and they're paying sort of a platinum rate. And I don't want to comment on whether that's right or wrong. I do feel that we could probably do it, well, I'm stating that we could do it cheaper. And even cheaper than buying into Chattanooga. I believe the $450,000 in my mind's eye is kind of a benchmark. And I believe we could do it cheaper and have a library in Red Bank for less than we could buy for just buying into Chattanooga. But obviously when you buy into Chattanooga, you get all of Chattanooga, which is just amazing. When you go down to the main library, that makerspace and 3D printing, and it kind of blows your mind. If that's what you want, we're not going to be able to do that anytime soon, if ever. But we can do other things very, very well and very, very much more economically.
I wonder if we had a branch in Red Bank, if we could leverage that with the Chattanooga system to create some positive collaboration there.
I would like to explore that. Certainly with some of the other smaller libraries like Signal Mountain. that's proximate to us. East Ridge and Collegedale are kind of too far away, but I would like to explore if we get there. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but that would be something I would love to do, is create a mini system with some of our neighboring libraries and possibly even Chattanooga.
Absolutely. Any questions, thoughts?
Were you thinking the 400,000 was going to include, is it like renting, leasing a property that already exists in our community?
That's what I'm thinking, that
Okay.
we would find a commercial space. I would love to be located nearby a coffee shop or a bank, or that was, in my lived experience, I don't really like standalone libraries that are kind of municipally operated all by themselves. I've always liked going to a mall and having one of the storefronts being a library, and then all the other things that mall might offer, grocery store or a bank or dry cleaners or whatever, sandwich shop, coffee shop. So that's my desire, would be to find commercial space, because I think what we would do is we'd bring a lot of goodness to that surrounding commercial space, and that's a byproduct of creating a library in Red Bank, is to keep people here in Red Bank and create a sense of place and thriving economy right there around the library. To me, that's one of the downsides of buying into the Chattanooga, is we're literally exporting people out of the city. It's worth the trip, but they're still out of the city.
I think in my mind's eye, the dream is for there to be a branch here in Red Bank that children can walk to after school during the summer when they're out of school, something that's accessible to them when they may not necessarily have parents who are not working, who can drive them, on a Wednesday in the summertime, or, after they get out of school, 3:45 p.m.
The Avondale branch is a great example of that.
Yeah, it's in the rec center.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really awesome facility.
As we envision the former Red Bank Middle School site and the Plaza North, that commercial area right there, it's just amazing things could be if a library were in that mix of what ultimately is envisioned for that part of our community.
Right. And you mentioned that you're not afraid of having to move locations in the subsequent years.
Yes, ma'am.
So if we find a spot that maybe works for us for a year or a couple of years, you're not intimidated by potentially moving into a new space as it comes available, or building a space further on down the road.
Correct. Yes, ma'am. The library that I started, we moved 3 times, and then after we landed on our 3rd spot, we expanded, and it was pretty easy to do. I mean, it has cost and effort, but it's very doable.
The library could be a positive influence on surrounding real estate opportunities, even more so perhaps if we were to kind of move around the city a little bit and bring things up with us as we go. All right, any other thoughts on the library?
Might there be focus groups or times that residents would have input?
Yes, absolutely. I was mentioning a library needs assessment.
Yeah.
If the city were to choose this path that's recommended, we would be undertaking to hire the executive director. That would be the first hire, and then they would essentially be the project manager that would build out the library. And one of the first steps would be just exactly what you're talking about, Commissioner, is engaging with potential patrons and interested people, and standing up, getting all that feedback as to what we really want to be doing on day one. What are the things that we need to build in first, and then we can build into later and later, because libraries are very dynamic. It may be that we start in a smaller, I mentioned 6,000 square feet, but it may be that there's 3,500 square feet available quickly, and we just go there and get started. And then year 3, we move to 6,000 square foot, or maybe the city builds 6,000 square foot or 10,000 square foot, because the library's just taken off and we need meeting space and we want all these other services delivered out of this library. So we need bigger space. The $400,000 is kind of what I'm saying. We should have that in mind initially, and then just be responsive to the need. I think Collegedale has grown into the budget that they have because the demand for service delivery is just there. It's not that they want to spend a ton of money, they just want to meet the needs. And then the needs have taken them to that level of commitment to library in that community. So it just reflects their patron base and their community desire for a library.
my understanding, speaking to the former mayor of Collegedale, she stated that there was a fair amount of pushback to the bond measure that their city undertook in order to acquire their library from the county system when the county disinvested many years ago. But now it's a beloved cornerstone of their community, especially among the elderly population, who utilizes it most. So I hope we could come to find a similar cornerstone for our community here in Red Bank, central gathering place. All right. Any other thoughts? Okay. Do you need anything else from us at this moment, Mr.
Okay.
Branham?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners.
All right. We have reached our customary 5:45 stopping point in order to allow for citizen comments. We don't have any other items on the agenda that won't be part of the regular session at 6 o'clock. If everyone is okay with tabling the remaining agenda items, we'll allow for citizen comments. Is that okay with everyone?
Could we just move the citizen comments up, and then if there are no citizen comments, then we could come back to the remainder of the items?
I would like a little break between. I have to go outside and have a coffee fit, and I'll be okay.
Okay.
All right. Anything on the agenda that anybody wants to address specifically in the work session prior to the 6 o'clock meeting? Okay. If not, then do we have any citizen comments for items on this work session agenda today? Okay. If there are no more comments, then we'll briefly adjourn and we'll reconvene for our 6 o'clock meeting and continue with our agenda items. Thank you all.